Three, two, one. Hello.
Penguins.
We are back with a Pyrofork review of uh, Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. Uh, I'm gonna start. I want to start doing more of these album reviews because I'm kind of in the mood. I haven't done them in a long time.
It's not like we have much else to do.
Yeah. All I've been doing is listening to music. That's seriously all I've been doing. So,
That's all I've been doing is just playing video games and not working on my album project for school.
yeah. Um, so, anyways, this is in the top five most iconic albums of all time, easily.
Yep.
And so,
Probably one of the most top 5 iconic T-shirts as well.
yeah, this is the ultimate Target T-shirt album.
It's up there with Abbey Road, the Nirvana logo, and Joy Division's Unknown Pleasures,
Yeah,
and the Rolling Stones lips.
yeah.
If you want to pick 5 iconic T-shirts, that's probably it. I don't even know if I was counting that correctly, but
So, I haven't listened to this album start to finish since high school. I've heard songs, over the years and stuff. I've listened to like certain tracks and stuff from this. But since last night. Last night is the first time since high school I listened from start to finish, and I was actually surprised how short this album was. Like, I remember thinking it was like felt longer when I was younger for some reason, but now I'm like it zoomed by so quick, and I think this is an awesome album, but I'm gonna be honest, it's not as good as I remember it being when I was younger. I think it might. I think it might have to.
Definitely in the same camp.
What's that?
Well, I'm definitely in the same camp with you there, Julian.
Yeah. I think it has to do with this album's so iconic, and that you've heard these tracks over and over and over that maybe the novelty just wears off. Because when I was the first time I listened to this album from start to finish, because I've heard songs from this album when I was like a kid and stuff here and there, but I listened from start to finish. I remember the day vividly. It was sometime in like June, I think, or like 2011. We were going camping, and this was playing in the car, which was the perfect setting because the sun was going down, and then you're just in the woods. It's cold. It's like, because it gets kind of cold at night, and that feeling, like, it was perfect. It hit me really hard. And that's why I always say I love that album, because how much it hit me, like, in that moment. That was, like, the perfect moment to, like, listen to this for the first time all the way through. But, the thing is...
I've actually got a very similar kind of memories about this album, as far as, like, in a car. Because I'd be driving with my dad. I don't know where. I'd be driving with him a lot when I was in, like, junior high. And he'd have CDs in his car.
Yeah.
The only one I really cared to listen to was this one. So he and I ended up listening to this album together a lot. So I've got a lot of memories just listening to this album with him.
Yeah.
Usually with the cigar smell, because my dad's a cigar guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I don't remember the last time I listened to this album all the way through. I did not do research for this review.
I didn't either.
I didn't particularly really need to, because I've heard this album so much I can really recall every part of it. And I'm in the sort of same camp. I don't think it's as good as it was when I first heard it, but that's more just to do with expanding my knowledge in other albums from the time, and also just albums in the Pink Floyd discography.
Definitely.
Even when I was in like sort of my peak years as a Pink Floyd fan, this album only could barely make it into the top 5.
I used to consider this my third favorite, but now I think it might be like my 6th or 7th or something. Yeah.
It would definitely make my top. It was definitely making my top 5 when I was listening to but I was only really listening to the later years of Pink Floyd and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's usually everyone asks you to rank Pink Floyd. They're really just saying like, what would you rank Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and The Wall? But now I've heard all of the Pink Floyd albums.
Yeah.
This doesn't exactly make the high end of the list, but it's certainly nowhere as bad as something like Endless River
or what's the Momentary Lapse of Reason.
The Division Bell.
I actually like the final cut.
That's one I kind of was supposed to go into hating.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There are some songs in there that are pretty good.
Yeah.
And that album that should get a review sometime.
Yeah, actually.
It kind of gets a lot of hate for being a Roger Waters solo album, but it's like, okay, well, Momentary Lapse of Reason and Division Bell are just David Gilmour solo albums. So
yeah.
Practice what you preach.
But so yeah, I love this album I still think this is a great album, but I loved it a lot when I was younger, and then and there's the stuff with it gave novelty to stuff, the Wizard of Oz syncing, which I've done, and only like parts of it work. Yeah, but the whole album doesn't really like sync. It's usually mostly the beginning of the album that syncs, but
really the big one that most people stand on is when David Gilmour says "race towards an early grave," Dwarf B falls off the fence, and like, I don't know, similar, but she's also not dying, so
yeah,
I don't know what you're getting.
But so yeah, to get in a little, I guess, do you want to do like give some background on this, or like just the recording or anything?
Yeah, so it's 1972 or 3.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I know they were making this.
It started in 72.
Yeah. So Pink Floyd, they were pretty well known in their own country. They were not really breaking globally. Like they had a lot of gigs in Europe and stuff like that. They were making really good music, metal, and Amagama, and Adam Hart Mother, making very experimental kinds of music. And this album came out of their desire to make really long, ambitious pieces. They'd already made Adam Hart Mother and Echoes, which were long 20-minute pieces. This was a whole 40-minute work that was going to make a whole album. And they had been workshopping this just live and stuff like that. So they were really all about that stuff. At the same time, they were also doing a soundtrack movie called Obscured by Clouds, which is a real good album. It's just much more poppier and accessible.
See, that might be one of my least favorite Pink Floyd albums.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I quite like it.
Yeah. But then again, one of my favorite Pink Floyd albums is Adam Hart Mother, and most people rank that pretty low.
Adam Hart Mother's great. But, this was sort of Pink Floyd really coming to grips with sort of mainstream success and experimentation. And I think those qualities sort of meet on this album. And some people could say they were selling out. I don't particularly think so. This is, for something that was so successful and had a lot of radio play, it is very heady, especially when you look at 70s pop, which I love, but it's very soft and clean. This is not the Carpenters or the Osmonds. No, I like the Carpenters, but this is not that.
Yeah.
This is how you end up with Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah, they're experimenting with sort of seguing pieces of music, kind of like what the Beatles did on Abbey Road. They're using pre-programmed synthesizers for the track On the Run, which is it really has sort of a forerun to sort of electronic music, and that's sort of how we come to Dark Side of the Moon, the story of Pink Floyd.
Yeah, and we were talking about because it's got a lot. This still gets a lot of radio play and stuff, and it's still even though it's really complex for its time, it's still much more accessible than a lot of those prog rock bands at the time, like King Crimson, Yes, or Genesis, because their stuff is this is almost more complex than a lot of stuff, but it's it's still more accessible than that stuff.
It's definitely more accessible. It's even more accessible than what they were doing before.
Yeah.
And even with like Wish You Were Here and Animals, it's even a bit more accessible than that.
Yeah.
That aside from like Have a Cigar and the title song, there's a lot of stuff on Wish You Were Here that is not really radio friendly.
Oh yeah. Well,
especially Animals.
The entirety of Shiner and Crazy Diamonds not. It's funny. I listened to Wish You Were Here right after I listened to this because I Wish You Were Here. I have a hard time ranking favorite albums, but it could be my favorite album ever. It's in the top 3 easily, but
I definitely also like Wish You Were Here much more than this one.
Yeah, and that one I still like a lot. This it kind of, I don't know. I still think this is a great album, but yeah. Again, the track list.
And I think just the sort of reputation of this album is a bit hurt by overexposure, and especially a lot of boomer nostalgia.
Yeah, and the Weed Bros, like, oh, I get high to Dark Side. It's always the go-to, even though what annoys me because they always get high to this one, even though Pink Floyd has a lot weirder albums.
Yeah, and also like it's funny how like associated with drugs, everyone's like, yeah, this album's a real good album to do drugs to. You gotta do drugs to this album when like the band themselves were very sober.
Yeah.
Especially when you know the history of how their original singer Sid Barrett became an acid casualty.
Yeah.
And Pink Floyd, I'm sure the members of the Floyd enjoyed a good toke here and there, but they were very a pint or two. But that's the funny thing about a lot of these prog rock bands is a lot of them were very clean.
Oh yeah.
They're just very proper English dudes who just enjoyed making complex music for the hell of it.
Yeah. And I think this album too gets a lot of kind of a lot of Pink Floyd stuff kind of too now because of the boomer-ish. They get kind of a lot of hate for no reason. It's an edgy thing to say. Well, guess what? I don't like Dark Side of the Moon. Kind of because they say it's because it's boomer music and therefore it's bad.
Or like the Beatles.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, bro. Get ready for this. Your mind's about to blow. I don't like them.
Yeah.
Oh!
Yeah, it's like they don't like they're not judging based on the music. It's just more my boomer parents like it, so therefore it's bad kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of music that does kind of gets ignored because of like Steely Dan fucking slaps.
Yeah.
But it's a bit boomerish, so they kind of ignore it. But Steely Dan's good, and so's this album.
Yeah. Can go on the track list. So it starts with "Speak to Me," which is I think a great intro. Actually, probably one of my favorite songs on the album.
It's credited to Nick Mason. I assume it's just because really the only instrument playing is, I assume that's a bass drum doing the kick.
Isn't
so I assume
isn't Gilmore the one singing on it?
Pardon?
Isn't Gilmore the one singing on it?
Well, Breathe, what comes after.
Yeah, Breathe is Gilmore.
Yeah, Speak to Me is sort of just...
Oh yeah, here's this lead vocal. We're on both on Wikipedia right now. Lead vocals.
I've got the album, I got the vinyl in front of me.
Oh, you're so fancy.
Yeah. I bought this in high school. Just a quick side note: the reissues for Pink Floyd reissues are so overpriced. It's like
I don't own any. Actually, I don't own any Floyd on physical anything, which is weird. I have a bunch of recorded CDs from when I made when I was in like middle school of Pink Floyd, but I don't have any physical.
So "Speak to Me" is sort of just like a minute-long intro. Interesting thing about it is that if you listen, there's a lot of stuff on it that is sort of it's basically it acts as sort of like an overture because there's a lot of elements down the road on the album that you hear on it. There's the famous Dark Side Voices, which was done with the band members. They had a bunch of cards and with just questions, and they just asked people who were around at the time. Members of the Wings turned up on this album. They even had something with Paul and Linda, but that never. Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney that never made it.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Those voices are a bit too famous, or at least Paul's is. And then you can hear planes, you can hear laughs, you can hear screaming, like on Great Gig in the Sky. You can hear cash registers. It is basically sort of like an overture to the rest of the album.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of builds with this like reverse chord and the screaming, which segues into the first proper song on the album, which is Breathe, which I think is an excellent song.
Yeah. And then...
How do you feel about Breathe?
Breathe. Oh, that's the one I was saying. That's one of my favorite tracks. I was confused. I always think these are the same track. I get so confused.
On the CD, well, like, when I was a kid, the CD we had, that was one track, which always kind of annoyed me because I did kind of want to.
Yes, that's why. That's why I've always thought it was one track, because it is on the CD.
Yeah, I think on streaming it's two separate tracks now, which is nice. Breathe is a very laid-back track. It's got very nice vocals from David Gilmour, but I think it's very criminally underrated as a vocalist. He's given a lot of dues. Even as a guitar player, he's not exactly a household name. Like he's given his dues as a guitar player.
Yeah.
But everyone kind of forgets he's also a lead singer.
Mm-hmm.
And he's definitely the best singer in the band.
Yeah.
The slide guitar is really nice in this too.
Yeah.
That's a big staple of David Gilmour.
And this song fit perfect on my camping trip. Because it's so windy and out, and it's like it just sounds like wind, like you're outside somewhere, like, isolated.
It's a very mood. The whole album is very moody, and it's a very cozy listen for all of its weirdness.
And then On the Run, which is that nice synth.
Yep. As I mentioned earlier,
and it sounds like it's recorded in an airport.
So they use I think. Let me see. Yeah, they used this a VC3, which was this sort of sequencer in which they played the notes, and then those notes would repeat, and then they would sort of modulate it with all these knobs and stuff like that, and then they would overdub. It's all about traveling and stuff like that. I guess fear of traveling because it ends with a plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
Very experimental, especially for its time, and I would cite it as a very early piece of electronic music.
Yeah.
Though you can go back to like the 1920s and find electronic music if you know about it.
Yeah.
I'm in a music history class, so. But very good song. It does kind of meander a bit, but it's definitely not something you'd listen to on its own.
Yeah.
It's definitely not something I would like. I want to listen to some Pink Floyd. I'm going to listen to On the Run.
Yeah.
But in general, Pink Floyd is kind of a band that you don't want to just listen to one song.
And I think I was bringing up too, I think that's why a lot of people don't care for them, because a lot of their songs on their own aren't that great. It's the whole piece of the album that, when you listen from start to finish, is what those songs. A lot of their songs are more effective in a larger piece than on their own.
Yeah, and actually, I'm wondering if that's probably why they were kind of held off on putting their albums on streaming. And I actually know for a fact that they were very weary about having their albums being sold digitally, or having their songs individually sold, because they were concerned with having songs being listened to out of context. And I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I think give the consumer the option to buy whatever the hell they want. But I do agree with the point that these songs really should be listened to on a whole, or else they won't be really enjoyed otherwise. So On the Run segues into Time, which is about what else? Time. Growing up.
Time, which is, I think,
old.
I think Time is in like the top 5 Pink Floyd songs.
Time is a great song. I think it takes a bit to begin with its
the intro, yeah.
But once it really kicks in, it's a fucking great song.
Yeah.
Roger Waters said when he was talking about the lyrics to the song, his thing about this song was that, like, when he was a kid, he was always kind of told by his mother, who you'll hear a lot about if you listen to Pink Floyd's The Wall or
Yeah.
watch the movie, or even the Nostalgia Critic review. Yeah, I can't believe we forgot about the Nostalgia Critic. He's kind of an important thing now in the history of this band.
Yeah.
Nothing's been happening with them. He really opened a conversation back up about the Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Anyway, but Roger Waters said of his mother that she would always be kind of like telling him to prepare for life. Like, you gotta practice, you gotta go to school, you got a job, because you gotta get ready for when life begins and stuff like that. And his whole thing was, well, life has already begun. I'm alive. He was kind of examining the sort of social construct about life and just preparation, and you get ready to go to school so you can get a job. You get a job till you retire, and then you just die.
Yeah.
And that's very deep, in my opinion. Very deep for a song.
Yeah, that's very depressing song. You read the lyrics.
Yeah, and it's got a great line near the end. Hanging on in quiet desperation is the English way.
The time has come. The song is over. Thought I had something more to say.
Yeah, it's like, oh shit, I've already run out of time.
You never really heard that in like a lot of songs back then. Like, you hear in like rap music now and stuff like they self-reference them recording the song.
Yeah.
It's like, the song is almost over. Singing it. Fourth wall breaking in songs.
Or Not Said Fred. I'm too sexy for this song.
Mm-hmm.
The end. The song has this song is where the song introduces the chorus girls, the background singers, who will be sort of present throughout the rest of the album and other Pink Floyd albums. Not the same chorus girls, obviously, but this kind of started having chorus like soul singers in the backgrounds of their songs. Also, it's got a real good, very good extended solo by David Gilmour, and Richard Wright sings the verses, sings the bridge sections.
Yeah,
he's got a very nice voice too.
Yeah, he's probably the most underrated Pink Floyd member.
Yeah,
nobody talks about him. That's contributed like good stuff to their albums.
Yeah, and he's probably the most talented as far as like musical theory. He's actually trained. He's like a trained classical and jazz pianist, and he brings a lot of that sensibility into this album, especially. Like there's the sort of those chords that divide the verse, that end the verses and start anew on Breathe. He got those chords from like Miles Davis albums and stuff like that, and it definitely adds a dimension to the music that wouldn't be there otherwise. Yeah. So time segues into a reprise of Breathe, which is very cool. And the lyrics appropriately begin with home, home again, as if it's like, yeah, you've returned to where you started, just for a little bit.
Yeah.
I really like those lyrics. Like, when I've come home cold and tired, it's good to warm my bones beside the fire. Very cozy line. And just really cool. And I always like reprises on albums. It really makes your ears perk up. You're like, hey, we've been here. Just a nice little reprise. And then we get to what I think is one of my favorite songs on the album, Great Gig in the Sky, which is written by Richard Wright, who we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It's basically it's a piano. It's basically just piano, what it starts with.
Yeah.
A bit of slide guitar.
And
it's all about, as the title suggests, it's all about dying.
Yeah.
And it features a very intense vocal solo by, I believe her name is Claire Torrey.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Claire Torrey. Very good instrument. I guess it's instrumental because there's no real lyrics.
Yeah.
But the vocal solo is an acquired taste. I remember as a kid when I first heard this song, I was a bit put off by it.
Yeah, I was too. I like it now a lot.
Yeah, I like it a lot, but it starts out fine, and then she's just screaming. At the time, I didn't get it, but now I do.
Yeah.
Because of the more experimental music I've listened to in my day.
Yeah.
This is nothing.
Yeah.
It's a real good song. Very beautiful, especially the piano parts to it. And that ends side 1 on the album, if you're listening on vinyl. And because of that, that's like the only song that does not sink you into the other one because of that. You ever wondered why? It's because, well, because you have to flip the record over. Everything else kind of segues into each other. And that's how then we come to Money.
Which I think is the worst song on the album.
I agree.
When I hear this on the radio,
overplayed.
on the radio, I get annoyed. I do not.
Yeah, it is overplayed as all hell. Yeah, it's like say what you will about like Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. That gets played a lot.
Yeah.
LOL, so school sucks. Grow a damn pair of balls. We should review Nostalgia Critics Galore.
Just the video. Just the video.
Just review that. Yeah, Money, the riff is nice.
Yeah.
It's a good riff, and if I ever pick up a guitar, I kind of find myself playing the riff, even if I don't want to. It's an earworm. But it is.
It doesn't really fit on the album, really.
No, it's
and it's a less. It's, to my opinion, it's because it's like a blues rock song, and
yeah.
I don't think it's as good as like Have a Cigar.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a less superior. It's like a more inferior Have a Cigar almost.
Yeah, Have a Cigar, which is kind of sort of the cousin of Money.
Yeah.
Because it is sort of like the blues rock radio of its album.
And this is the song too. I think maybe why a lot of people say it's very boomerish. I can see this song playing. People like, yeah, this is like a boomer song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just it's interesting. It is blues rock, but it is a bit heady in the time signature changes.
Yeah.
The saxophone solo by Dick Perry is nice, but yeah, I don't know. It just really does not fit with the rest of the album, in my opinion. And it just kind of goes on too long. Especially after the main guitar solo, when it's just a minute of just the come on, get to the point already. I'm with you, man. It's definitely the most overrated song, one of the most overrated songs in Pink Floyd history. And I think it's only like that because I think it gets played a lot because it's just the only song on the album that can really. I hear other songs from this album on the radio, but this is not a terrible song by any means, but definitely the weakest on the album.
Yeah.
But it segues into what is, in my opinion, my favorite song on the album.
Okay.
Us and Them. The song has an interesting history. It was originally just a simple piano piece by Rick Wright called The Violent Sequence, because it was written for Antonioni's movie Zabriskie Point, which I haven't seen. Some Pink Floyd songs did end up on the Zabriskie Point soundtrack, including what was literally just Be Careful with That Axe, Eugene, but with a different title.
Mm-hmm.
Antonioni did not want it on the album, as Roger Waters said, because he said, "It was too sad. It makes me think of church." So they used turned into this song, Us and Them. And I think it's a beautiful song.
Yeah.
It really builds up. It's got very soft verses, and then it really builds up with the really emotional chorus and the background singers. And the Dick Perry saxophone is very nice on it. A lot less overwrought than it is on Money. A lot more smooth and laid back. And it's a very moving song, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then goes any color you like, which is a cool little
Yeah,
instrumental.
yeah, it's a nice little diversion. It definitely means the least out of any song on the album because it's just an instrumental. Uh, it's nice. It's really the only interesting thing I can say about the song is that on my music software, Studio One, there's a preset on the synthesizer called "You Like Any Color," and it just sounds like that the synthesizer on this. And that's really all I can say about that. Um, and this it goes right into "Brain Damage," which is sung by Roger Waters. I think it's like the only song one of the two songs he only sings on this album. It's good.
It's good. I think it's good, but it's kind of an overrated track. When a lot of people talk about this album, people say, "Oh my god, Brain Damage." Yeah, it's pretty good, but I don't know. I don't feel like it.
I think this started the trend that happened later on Pink Floyd albums, where the title of the album is in the lyric. I wouldn't even say it's a trend. It definitely happens a lot in The Wall, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
They definitely David Gilmour thought he was real smart during Momentary Lapse of Reason and Division Bell by doing the same thing. But like, let's have the album title not as a song, but a lyric on the album. As I See You in the Dark Side of the Moon. And this is the song is, I believe, directly about Syd Barrett, who was the original singer who went insane. Though this could be a touchy subject.
Because it's actually the mental health of Syd Barrett's actually highly debated. Because there's some for the longest time, that was always the narrative, but now there's a lot of stuff that came out with his family and stuff that kind of there's a huge debate. Not really get into it because it's kind of unrelated to the album, but yeah.
I definitely believe it's definitely kind of like it's definitely a Brian Wilson situation.
Yeah.
Where he took a lot of acid that he shouldn't have been taking, and that kind of affected a pre-existing condition he had. Yeah. But at the same time, he was not as far gone as people said. People say Brian Wilson went completely insane after Smile, which is not true. He like the next 5 Beach Boys albums after that were still made by Brian and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's less of a case with Syd Barrett, Syd Barrett still had 2 solo albums, which I haven't listened to, but I've heard are good.
Yeah.
And kind of out there. So the whole Syd Barrett thing is a little debatable. And it is, and I don't even think the band was wrong to replace him, because he was definitely becoming a liability, and then we wouldn't have gotten David Gilmour. But they definitely did kind of exaggerate his condition.
Yeah.
And to kind of like excuse to get away with it, and also it did kind of help their image as like a tragic image of like a band who've lost their way.
Yeah.
Some boomers are not going to be happy with this if they even listen to this. But that's kind of the case with Syd Barrett.
Yeah.
It's kind of the most interesting thing you can say about the song, even. And
the whole Wish You Were Here album was pretty much about him.
Yeah.
And he showed up to the studio like, fucking, it's about...
No eyebrows, bald, fat.
Anyways.
Yeah. But I think it's an important subject to bring, because
it's about,
Yeah, and it definitely, addressing this does kind of removes the stigma of mental illness. Like, mental ill people are still lucid and can still do stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Just look at the career of Daniel Johnston, just to prove it. And then Brain Damage segues right into Eclipse, which is just sort of like a nice poem that kind of closes it out. It's everything, all that you touch, all that you see, all that you taste, all that you feel. Basically, just a bunch of alls. And again, it's another Roger-led song. It's nice. it's a good close to the album. Definitely the takeaway, just kind of talking about these last few songs, the takeaway I'm getting is that, the second half of the album is definitely not as strong as the first half. Because other than Us and Them, which I think is a great song, everything else is like, eh. And that's kind of how you end up with Eclipse. I always wanted as a kid if we ever had a solar eclipse next time. We did recently.
Yeah.
But it was so fucking cloudy.
I didn't. I actually just slept through it. I didn't even care. And people were pissed at me like it's once in a lifetime. It's actually once every 40. It's actually once every 40 years. It's actually once every 40 years. But
you can't sleep during the solar eclipse.
The last of a minute.
Supposed to pee poo poo science says. Yeah, but as a kid, I always wanted, if I was ever sitting through a solar eclipse, I wanted to synchronize this song when the eclipse finally happens.
Mm-hmm.
So be it.
Yeah.
And that's Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah. We both think this is a great album, but as we said, it's just not as good as you listen. When you listen to the first few times, it's like really, really good, but then over time, it just it's comparatively weaker to both Pink Floyd's songs, but also other sort of contemporary prog rock projects at the time. Yeah,
like a lot of King Crimson stuff or more heavy stuff.
Yeah,
but this is very accessible. There's one thing I always thought was odd. There's an episode in Venture Brothers where Dr. Venture shows his son prog music. He starts it with Yes, and then later he's like listening to Pink Floyd. It's like he's in a Floyd hole, and I'm like, I think Floyd is a bit less heavy than Yes as far as like.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. That this a lot of Floyd stuff's like almost more. They're more complex than a lot of like Yes or King Crimson, but Pink Floyd's more accessible than those bands, I think.
And the Floyd they're good musicians, but they're definitely not as like they're less proggy than the rest of them because like other prog bands can play.
It's not like that. Yes, was it the Yes album? Which one is it? Like Ocean. I don't know what it's called. Ocean. I listened to that and it's most people can't sit through that album. It's so fucking prog. It's like out there, and so.
Pink Floyd, they're more brought up in like jazz. They're more brought up in like blues, especially. A lot of their songs are a lot slower because they're kind of just blues jams, but minor key blues, but done in a sort of spacey, druggy, synthesized kind of way that kind of makes them prog by association.
Yeah.
But it's definitely the most accessible prog band.
Oh yeah.
I'd say. Other than, I don't know, maybe Rush. But Rush are kind of hard prog.
Yeah. And early Genesis was pretty out there. So yeah. Any last thoughts on this album? Anything?
I give it a 7 out of 10.
Oh, wow.
It's closer to an 8 than a 6.
Oh wow, that's. I would have originally given this a 10 a long time ago, and I kept it at 10 for a while, I think, because it's just simply the fact I hadn't listened to it in a long time, and I was just basing off of memory and stuff. But now I would lower it to a 9. I'd say 9. It's a good solid 9 for me.
Yeah, it's closer to an 8 than a 6.
Yeah, it's closer to an 8 to me than a 10.
Yeah, it's all in the second half of the album not being as strong as the first. They kind of start strong and then they put their best foot forward and it kind of grabs you in.
Yeah.
And that's what I say about Dark Side of the Moon. Listen to Animals. That's my favorite Pink Floyd album.
That's actually one of my mid-tier albums as well. Which is sad because that's a lot of people's.
Yeah, it is. Animals is. I love Animals and it's my favorite, but it is kind of like the contrarian Floyd's choice. It's like, actually,
Yeah.
the best Pink Floyd album is Animals.
Yeah,
But,
my favorite's Wish You Were Here. That's my favorite.
That's very close to probably my second favorite. So
My second favorite, which can sound contrarian to, is the Piper Gates. They're completely different albums, completely different Floyd, but I just, as an album, just based off of music, not Pink Floyd albums, I just like it a lot more than most Pink Floyd albums.
That does put people off. Is like, ooh, listening to the first Pink, or just not even just Piper, just early Pink Floyd albums. You're going in and you're gonna be put off by it's definitely more 60s.
Sid Barrett is one of my favorite songwriters of all time.
With Sid Barrett's very heavy British accent and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my brother was like, it's kind of just more regular 60s stuff. And I'm like, not really. It's a lot more heady and stuff like that.
Sid Barrett's one of my favorite songwriters. I think he's actually kind of underrated person, sort of. A lot of people don't like him. I remember there's a Joey Diaz clip where he said he didn't like Barrett. Joey Diaz says he didn't like Barrett Floyd because he said all it was just him screaming. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? But people I know that...
That's Roger... Barrett isn't the screamer of the band. It was Roger Waters.
Yeah, Roger Waters screamed a lot. And a lot of people say they won't listen to... I don't like using the word normies, but a lot of people, casual Pink Floyd listeners, they always say they don't like Sid Barrett, Pink Floyd, because he was crazy. So therefore it's not good. It's like, what?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
If that's gonna disqualify a singer, just get rid of half of music.
Yeah.
Crazy.
A bunch of most musicians are mentally ill or drug addicts and stuff.
Yeah, like don't listen to the Beach Boys, don't listen to Miss Lauryn Hill, don't listen to Kanye. Okay, you bros.
Don't even. You can't even listen to. You can't even listen to. People listen.
People can't handle songs about gnomes.
And you know how we feel about Eminem. You won't even be able to listen to Eminem. So, you know what I mean? Like, that's so vague. Like, you're gonna get rid of a lot of people. Like, that's your, like, your standard.
Yeah. Piper's a great album. I really do like Saucerful of Secrets. Some songs are like, eh. And there's a lot of songs on Saucerful that are better live than they are.
And Jug Band Blues is my favorite song on that album.
That song makes me sad.
That is so...
the title song, too. Like, the title song is fine on the album, but listen to, like, the Pompeii version or the Amagama version.
Yeah. But yeah, we should probably wrap this up.
Yep.
So yeah, that's our thoughts on Dark Side Moon, and pretty much Pink Floyd in general. These are a lot of our opinions on the other albums, but so yeah.
Nothing exists in a vacuum.
Thank you for listening. If you got this far, you're a real hero and a real human being.
You're a true pyro hawker.
Pyro head. I don't know. I hate when people start naming their fucking fans like that. Just blank head.
You're a true mega minder.
Anyways, thanks for listening and bye bye.